Hello, and in this video, I'll walk you through how to create a calculator using the Svelte 5 runes introduced in the new experimental update in Svelte. As you can see from the calculator, you can add numbers, you can also subtract them, divide them, multiply them, add decimals, and you can toggle negative and positive. It also has a beautiful background and it has a beautiful UI. Let's get straight into the code. So at first, open the terminal and run npm init svelte. If you already have a folder, you could leave this input blank, but you could also create a folder by typing in the name of the folder you want. Let's just leave it blank and let's just say yes to continue. Let's click the skeleton project and let's click yes using your TypeScript syntax. Let's click no additional options, and once it's done scaffolding the app, we input the command npm install svelte at next. This command will allow us to use runes in our project. Alright, once it's done installing, you can run npm run dev. Once it's done running, you could just press the X, and in the source folder, open the plus page.svelte file. Delete all the default markdown. So at first, we create a script, and we create a variable, a constant actually, called operations. We will have them as div for division, mul for multiplication, add for addition, and subtract and sub for subtraction, and we also mark it as a const. You'll see why we're doing this later. We also create another constant called operations display, and we just say ampersand divide colon ampersand times colon and plus and minus as const. We also need to flag this script as a TypeScript. So then below in the markup, we just say div dot calculator container. This little snippet right here will allow us to input the class, and you'll see that the class gets created with the calculator container class. We also say dot container dot calculator. We do a dot display to display the current number that is on the screen of the calculator. And just for some display, I'm blanking. Just to show how it would work, let's just put a dummy number, 100. Then we do a class that contains a grid and an input grid. We also do a dot grid dot operands grid. If you're not familiar with Emmet, then you should know that Emmet allows us to create variables using the CSS references to those variables. So if I were to do hashtag whatever ID we want, it creates it with the ID. We could also string a bunch of IDs and classes together. Class 2, and you see that it applies class 2, class, and the ID of ID. So that's just the basics of Emmet. Let's create another button, dot tertiary button with C, because this will be the clear button, dot tertiary button, and this will be the negative or positive switch for the number. Button class tertiary button, and this will be to add the decimal place. Now we create a logic block of the each provided to us by Svelte. We do this by using the each block snippet, and we do new array of length 10 dot fill null dot map underscore ni 9 minus I as number. Right? So if you don't know what this is just an array of 10 numbers that go from 9 to 0. So 9, 8, 7, and so on until 0. So each time it iterates over, we just create a new button for each number. And if the number is 3, if the number is 0, we put it to span 3. You'll see why the span 3 class will be important. And we just display the number. Minus I, make sure to fix that. And now below this one, we do a dot grid, dot operations grid as each block. And we do a operations, and we do operation, and then I to get the index of the current item. And we do button dot secondary button. And we do at HTML operations display I. So it'll get the index that we are on and display the current display. Then below it, we create a button that will be equals that will get the results. So we just give it the class of accent button. All right, below everything, we create a style element. So before we create the style element, let's just view how it looks like in our dev server. We just click on this link to open up the dev server in our browser. You could do command click on Mac or control click on Windows. So if we just press click, you can see that we have the display and a row of buttons. We have the 9, 8, 7, and so on until 0. We also have the control buttons that change the value of the actual number, and these are the operations. All right, let's go back and let's create styles. Let's create the styles. And before we create the styles for the actual calculator, let's create styles for the actual HTML website because it's looking a bit bland. Then we do @lib slash style dot we do style.css, and in the lib folder we create a new file called style.css. What this prefix $lib does, it references the lib folder from any file in the whole tree. So we go back to the style.css and we import a URL for the font that we're going to use. So if you want to copy down the URL, you could go down to the GitHub link that I have down in the description. So let's create a style for the body. Because by default the body has some margin, let's just take out the margin. Let's also take out the overflow because we don't want the user to scroll to a place that he should not scroll to. We also do background image because we are going to use a gradient for the background. We want to make a cool effect that the gradient will be moving throughout the life cycle of the app. If we want it to continually move all the time. So, how do we do that? At first, we create a radial gradient as the background. We also create a background size of 1000% by 1000%. We set the animation to gradient BG. We'll create a gradient BG animation in a bit. We set it to 15 seconds. Ease in, out, and infinite. Because we want the animation to continue on for all of the life cycle of the website. We also set the font family to the font family that we imported, serif, width, view width, height is equal to 100 view height. And we create a new animation by setting the at keyframes, gradient BG, 0%, and we set the background position to 0%, 30%. And we'll just create it until it is up to 100. We'll go up by 25. So we just do 50, 75, 25, and so on. So in the 25, we set the 50. We also set 90 here. In the 50, we set 50. And we also set 100 on the first property. We set 50 on the first property on the 75%. And we set 10. And we leave 100 the same as the 0 because we want it to come back. All right. Let's fix the error with the colon. And if we go back, let's see what the error is. All right, now you can see that it's animating the background. Sweet. All right. So let's close the style.css file. And let's create the grid for the buttons. Let's create the actual calculator. So this is going to be a lot of CSS, but bear with me. We create the button style, height, fit, content, padding, 1 rem, background color, RGBA, 250, 250, 250, 0.69, border radius 0.5 rem, box shadow 0, 4 pixels, 30 pixels, and RGBA of just white with a 0.1 opacity. Fix this typo. Backdrop filter is equal to blur 4 pixels, border none, font size 2 rem, cursor, pointer, transition 200 milliseconds, ease in out, and the transition property set to transform. Now you can see that all of them have some padding and they're scaled up a bit. So I don't really want to write all the CSS. So let's just go over to the GitHub and copy and paste. So you just go to src, routes, plus page.svelte, and you can scroll down and just copy and paste the styles. I already created the button style, but you could feel free to copy and paste the whole project and just follow along with that. The buttons don't quite work yet. I mean, they look like they work, but they don't. So let's fix this. Let's go back to the code. Let's minimize the style. And let's see how to fix it. At first, let's create our first stateful property by using the state room. Is equal to at state type of operations number or null. So this is either one of these or null. You can see that it's either one of these items or null because we use the type of, we use this, and we inputted the array property, which allows us to get the items. But if we just remove the as const, you can see that it's just a string. But if we set it as const, you can see that it works again. Those are just some of the things that allow us to work with types just a little bit better in TypeScript. So we let first number equal to stateful property, which will be a number or null. And we set it to null, essentially. And we can also create a second number. Second number. And let's also create some properties for that number. Number negative is equal to at state boolean. So if the number is negative, we won't actually set it as negative because it'll interfere with some of the calculations we'll have. We'll just set it as negative every time we submit the number. So we also have this property, this number negative property, there to display the negative whenever we have it toggled. We also do a let using decimal property, which will work the same as the number negative, but instead of being for the negative, we just have it for if it's using a decimal or not. So we let zeros added is equal to at state 0. So for the zeros added, it's just an edge case that I needed to use this property to fix it, because essentially when we went into decimal places like 0.1 or 0.2, I couldn't add any more decimals without it being invalid math. So whenever you have a calculator, you can have a decimal and add some zeros at the end. That's what I wanted to do. So we also set a variable called let current display is equal to stateful property of an empty string. So we use the effect rune to watch for changes to update this current display. If number negative, we say it'll be a negative sign or an empty string. We say we include a decimal if we are using a decimal, or it'll be an empty string. And the amount of zeros will be calculated later. We set this as an empty string. Now we say if zeros are added, then we add the amount of zeros that there will be. Be a new array of zeros added, the length of zeros added. We say fill is null, and we map it to just a bunch of zeros. And we say dot reduce previous, and then current, and we say previous plus current. Now we say if the current operation is not null and the second number includes a decimal, point, then the decimal is equal to nothing. And also, if the operation is null and the first number includes a decimal, decimal, the decimal will also be nothing. Now we say if the second number or current operation is not null, then we say the current display is equal to the current sign plus second number or 0.toString plus decimal plus zeros. And we also say return. And if everything goes as planned, we say that the current display is equal to the current sign plus first number or 0.toString plus decimal plus zeros. So as you can see, nothing works yet because we are not displaying it in the markup. Now let's create the methods. But before we create the methods, let's just set the display. Current display. You can see that's 0. If we refresh, you can see that's 0. Alright? So let's create the methods. Our first method will be a toggle number negative. Toggle number negative, which is basically how it sounds. It toggles the number negative property to either be true or false depending on what it is right now. So if it is true, it'll be negative, and if it's negative, it'll be true. And we also create a new function called toggle using decimal. And we say if the current operation and second number dot toString dot includes, if it includes a decimal, then we just return it. We also do the same thing for the first number. We also say if the current operation is null. If everything goes as planned, we say the using decimal is equal to not using decimal. All right. So we also create another function called append the number. This is basically the whole calculator logic put into one function. Its job is to basically append the numbers and see whether or not to make it negative, make it a decimal, or make it positive, or increment the number. This basically handles everything that has to do with clicking the numbers. So let's see if the second number and the second number dot to string dot length is greater than 10, which is the maximum length we want. We just say return. We don't want anyone else to be able to append numbers. We let second number has decimal is equal to second number dot to string includes the decimal point, and we say if using decimal or second number has a decimal, and if the number is equal to 0, zeros added plus plus, and then we also say return. And we also say if everything goes to plan, we say second number is equal to second number or 0 plus number that we got inputted divided by either 10 to the power of the zeros added or to 10 to the power of the second number's length after the decimal place plus the zeros added plus 1. We'll see how that looks like. So it's gonna look a little bit complicated, but I'll explain it to you after we're done writing it. And second number dot toString split dot length is greater than 1, 10 to the power of second number dot toString dot toString dot split dot length plus zeros added plus 1. Second number is not null, so if it's a number, and if the length of the amount of numbers after the decimal place, or if the amount of numbers after we split it from the decimal place is greater than 1, which basically means if there's a decimal value inside the number. If there is, then we divide the actual number we have by 10 to the power the length of the numbers after the decimal place plus 1 plus the zeros added. So basically, if this is the case, we just reset the zeros added, we set it to 0, and we just return. After this, we set second number is equal to second number or null times 10 plus number. Return. So if we are not using decimal, or the second number does not have a decimal, it's just an integer, then we multiply the second number by 10 and we add the number. We have basically appended to the end of the number. So we copy all of this logic for the second number and we apply it to logic of the first number. So let's get every instance of second number right here. Make sure not to put it in the parentheses of the if statement. We say first number has decimal. Now, in each of the buttons that have the number, we set an onClick property that will append the number that it has. On click append number. So let's see how this works. As you can see, it appends a number at the end. So now let's collapse this function because it's a really big function. And below this function, let's create a new function called clear. Function clear. Oh, let's also fix this typo right here. Let's set the function clear. And if the second number exists, if second number, then second number is equal to null. And we also clear operands. We'll create the clear operands function later. Let's just stick to the clear function. If current operation, so basically if the second number is null, but the operation is not null, we set the current operation to null. And we just return. And if there's a first number, we set it to null, and we clear operands. So under this one, let's create a new function called hard clear, which includes the clear operands function that we'll create. It'll also set the second number to nothing, the first number to nothing, the current operation to nothing. And now let's create the clear operands function. Function clear operands. Let's say zeros added are 0, number negative is equal to false, using decimal false. And now below the clear operands function, create a new function called set current operation. And we get the operation, which is going to be one of the operations in the list. We do this by saying type of operations, and we set it to the array notation number. So we say submit current number. We'll create this function after. We say current operation is equal to operation, and we also clear the operands. Let's create the submit current number function. If current operation is null, and if the number is negative, and the first number does not equal to null, then first number is equal to minus first number. We say first number. So now we get a new function called getResult, which will basically, as it is titled, it'll get us the result of the function. So if there's no current operation, we just return. We don't do anything, because if there's no current operation, we can't do nothing to the number. So if there is an operation, we get a local result. Local results is equal to 0. And we say if first number null, first number is equal to 0. We also say that if second number is equal to null, then second number is equal to the first number. You'll see why this is important later. And we say if number negative, we say second number is equal to minus second number. We create a switch for the current operation. We say case. We do all the cases. And we say local results is equal to first number divided by second number. In the mul case, we create a times, we multiply the result. In the addition case, we add them together. In the subtraction case, we subtract them. So let's move it here. And below all of these, let's break each case. The break basically allows us if we run into one of the cases, it won't run into any of the other cases. So below the switch, call the hard clear function and say the first number is equal to local results. So it'll clear everything in the calculator and set the first number to the local results we got, thus displaying the results and being able to use it later on. So we say let show calculator So before we do the show calculator, let's assign all the events to each of the buttons. So at first, let's do this one. On click is equal to clear. And we say if first number is equal to null and the second number is equal to null, then we do the C, or else we do the AC. This is just an indicator to the user that we are either erasing the first number, we are either erasing nothing, or we are erasing something that is already inputted. So it's a good indicator for the user. So in the plus or minus case, we do the on click, toggle number negative, and in the decimal case, we do toggle using negative, toggle using decimal. We already did each of these buttons. We do on click is equal to, we set it to the set current operation and the operation we're in. And in this one, we just say on click get result. So now let's see how it works inside this. So if we refresh, we say 9 plus 9 is equal to 18. If we say 7 divided by 7, we get 1. If we get 2 times 9, we get 18. And if we say multiply without giving a second number, it'll be 324 because we get 18 times 18. Because as you can see in the get results method, the second number gets set to the first number, so it'll be 18 times 18. We also set 2 times 5, and we could also use the result divided by, let's say, 5, and it'll give us the result back. You can see how we can chain calculations together. Now, one last thing to make this look even more aesthetic, let's have the calculator fly in every time we start the website. So we accomplish this by creating a variable called show calculator is equal to a stateful property of false, because we set it to false, and we also say effect is equal to show calculator is equal to true. So in the effect, you might think that, oh, when we load in, the page is already going to be true and the transition won't get set, right? But there's a cool way that this effect function works. This effect rune works the first time it is done, the first time it is run is at the first page load. So it is not run in the server if you're using SSR mode. So we do s if block show calculator. We do copy, and we go into the end of this and we do like that. And we also say the transition property. No, we don't set the transition property, we set the in property to fly. And we say the y is equal to 150%. Easing is equal to circ out. You could put it into whatever easing you want, but I prefer to use the circ out. We set the duration to 400. And we also set the delay. See, whenever we load, it fades in and it also flies in from the bottom. So this is how you get a really aesthetic calculator that runs perfectly. Let me know if you found any bugs, and let me know if you customize it. Also, a challenge for you. See if you could customize the flying animation and see if you can add extra functionality to this calculator. Thank you for watching, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.